Welcome to BeFM Drama. I'm your host, Ryan Estrada. This is part 4 of our mini-series of Edgar Allan Poe stories. I mentioned last time how I was just now discovering that all of Poe's supposedly spooky stories are actually comedies. And I definitely noticed that this time around while adapting the Cask of Amontillado. I'd never read it before this. I knew it was about someone being sealed up in a basement, so I always just assumed that Amontillado was the victim and cask meant his casket. But no. The Cask of Amontillado is simply a super fancy bottle of wine that someone uses to lure his pretentious friend into what is quite clearly a murder basement. Sure, the walls are all lined in skulls, but the guy's so into fancy wine that he walks right in and patiently waits while being bricked up inside. What did his friend do to earn such revenge? Never explained. Doesn't matter. It seems quite inconsequential. It's an odd couple story where one guy has quite serious anger issues, and the other is way too trusting and easy to manipulate. It's a very dark comedy. So please enjoy Abe Puri and I in BeFM Drama's production of The Cask of Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could. But when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who know so well the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled. But the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally undressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done him wrong. It must be understood that by neither word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile was now at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato. Although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared, he prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have had the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires. In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack. But in the matter of old wines, he was sincere. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk one evening, during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with his excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand.
Hey!
My dear Fortunato, you're luckily met. How remarkably well you're looking today. But I've received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado. But I have my doubts.
How? Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible. In the middle of the carnival?
I have my doubts. I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. Well, you were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain.
Amontillado?
I have my doubts.
Amontillado?
And I must satisfy them.
Amontillado!
Yeah, but as you're engaged, I'm on my way to Lucrezi. If anyone has a critical turn, it's he. He'll tell me.
Lucrezi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry.
And yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own.
Come, let us go.
Whither?
For your vaults.
Oh, my friend, no, I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucrezi.
I have no engagement. Come.
My friend, no. It's not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They're encrusted with niter.
Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado! You have been imposed upon, and as for Lucrezi, you cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado.
Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, and putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a roquelaire closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until the morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient. I well knew to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down to a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent and stood together upon the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode.
The pipe?
It's further on, but observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls.
Niter?
Niter, how long have you had that cough?
It is nothing.
Come, we'll go back. Your health is precious. You're rich, respected, admired, beloved. You're happy as I once was. You're a man to be missed. For me, is no matter. We'll go back. You'll be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucrezi.
Enough. The cough's mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough.
True. And indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this medoc will defend us from the damps. Drink.
I drink to the buried that repose around us.
And I drink to your long life.
These vaults are extensive.
The Montresors were a great and numerous family.
I forget your arms.
A huge human foot door and a field azure. The foot crushes a serpent rantom whose fangs are embedded in the heel.
And the motto?
Nemo mi impune lascit.
Ah, good.
The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm at the Medoc. We had passed through the long walls of piled skeletons with casks and puncheons intermingling into the innermost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and at this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. The niter. See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We're below the river's bed. Drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we'll go back ere it is too late. Your cough.
It is nothing. Let us go on, but first, another draught of the meadow. You do not comprehend?
Not I.
You are not of the Brotherhood.
How?
You are not of the Masons.
Oh, yes.
You? Impossible. A Mason?
A Mason?
A sign.
It is this trowel?
You jest, but let us proceed to the Amontillado.
Be it so. These walls are lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. There, exposed by the displacing of the bones. Do you see that still interior crypt?
I see. It is in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7.
Proceed. Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucrezi...
He is an ignoramus.
Just pass your hand over the wall. You cannot help feeling a niter. Indeed, it's very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No? All right, then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the attentions in my power.
The Amontillado?
True, the Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I have before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials and in the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low, moaning cry from the depths of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and finished without interruption the 5th and 6th and the 7th tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the masonwork, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. For a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. It was now midnight and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th and the 9th and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position, but now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato.
A very good joke indeed. An excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo. Over our wine.
The Amontillado.
Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will not they be awaiting for us at the palazzo? The Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone.
Yes, let us be gone.
For the love of God, Montresor!
Yes, for the love of God. Fortunato? Fortunato? No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. Rest in peace. That was The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. Kind of makes you wonder how many people out there that you think of as friends are secretly wishing to bury you alive, and what could they promise to get you to willingly walk inside their trap? Poe had a real way of getting deep inside a character's head and showing their thought process, even in their darkest moments. Well, next up we have a sad story that does just that once again. It's called The Haunted Palace. It tells of a once beautiful and stately palace that has fallen into disrepair. But it's actually a metaphor for Poe's head and the happy thoughts that are no longer found there. Please enjoy Farnaz Parasti performing The Haunted Palace.
In the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tenanted, once a fair and stately palace, radiant palace, reared its head. And the monarch thought's dominion, it stood there. Never seraph spread a pinion over fabric half so fair. Banners yellow, glorious, golden, on its roof did float and flow. This, all this, was in the olden time, long ago. And every gentle air that dallied in that sweet day along the ramparts, plumed and pallid, a winged odor went away. Wanderers in that happy valley through two luminous windows saw spirits moving musically to a lute's well-tuned law. Round about the throne were sitting poor Ferrigine. In state his glory well befitting, the ruler of the realm was seen, and all with pearl and ruby glowing was the fair palace door, through which came flowing and sparkling evermore a troop of echoes, whose sweet duty was but to sing, in voices of surpassing beauty, the wit and wisdom of their king. But evil things in robes of sorrow assailed the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never morrow shall dawn upon him desolate, and round about his home and glory that blushed and bloomed is but a dim, remembered story of the old time entombed. And travelers now within that valley through the red-lit windows see vast forms that move fantastically to a discordant melody, while like a ghastly rapid river through the pale door a hideous throng rush out forever and laugh, ha ha, but smile no more.
Thank you for listening to BeFM Drama. This was The Cask of Amontillado and The Haunted Palace, both by Edgar Allan Poe. They were read by Abe Puri, Farnas Prosti, and me, Ryan Estrada. Path of the Goblin King, Unnatural Situation, and Mystery Bazaar are by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech and released under Creative Commons Attribution License. Thank you for listening.